And now, a native podcast with Matt and Zach. And welcome back to another episode of A Native Podcast. I am Zach, and with me, as always, is Matt. And I got to start it off that way, as always, and say, Matt, buddy, how we doing today?
It's been a hot one out here in the Pacific Northwest. Been
Yeah,
100 degrees the last 3 days. Ooh,
no bueno, as they say, no bueno. It's uh,
yeah.
it's
Oh, doing
82. It's 82 degrees on the Fort Peck Reservation right
oh that you cannot complain with a day like that. That's perfect.
now. Actually, I can because on those nice days
Yeah.
where I live, we have a lot of bad flies and
Oh,
mosquitoes up here because of
oh
the
wow.
farm fields, you know,
Yeah.
because they're always watering their farm fields. So you know, that mud and that it's perfect. And these flies, man, oh my gosh,
You,
they are
you
the
guys get
worst.
crickets, a lot of those
Yes.
there? Okay. Do not tell the Oaxacans because that's a delicacy in their culture.
Oh, no, I have I last summer I had like I remember there was more crickets in my garage. I've only seen a few this year, but last summer I had a ton.
Oh wow.
But I mean I've redone the garage, so that was part, figuring
Yeah.
out cleaning it up.
Well, I kind of figured with the way the farms in the Missouri River like comes through, like there's got to be crickets in that environment.
Exactly, exactly. But we
Um,
ain't talking crickets today. No way. If you clicked on today's episode, thank you. First and foremost, we ask that you please like, subscribe, add, follow, share. Just, right now, if you're listening to this episode, just hit the like button, please. Like, it helps us out, it helps us grow. We really do appreciate it. Thank you for those who comment. Thank you for those who email us back. I don't know, Matt, have we got any emails yet? None right now?
not at the moment. I think everyone's still on their summer vacays, but
Right?
they
No, I
usually
feel that.
start coming in come fall.
No, I feel that. I feel that. Any fun facts you may have for us to get us started today?
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, today we're talking about the salmon, and as the salmon has a pretty broad area with indigenous folks and like the bison, very similar. Um, but the one fun fact I came across here, which I did not know they traveled like this, salmon in their saltwater phase travel can go an estimated 18 miles a day, but
Wow.
they are capable of maintaining an average of 34 miles per day when covering long distances. So that's in water, that's pretty far in the ocean.
Well, that's covering some ground. They get around. I mean, they've put sensors and trackers in those fish that they've monitored. I saw one in Yellowstone Lake. This is a rainbow trout, not a salmon, but
Uh,
they showed it, and there's no rhyme or reason. It's very much so just like, I'm over here. I'm over here. Now I'm in this little wing. Oh, I stayed in this wing for a while. I went over here, I came back. Oh, now I'm up here for a couple months. Now I'm down here. And it's the whole lake, and it's a huge lake, when you take that. So fish are they're also smart. I think that's the other thing people don't understand is how smart fish are.
right.
There are some really good documentaries to right off the bat. Patagonia,
Oh,
uh,
yeah.
Artificial, Artifishal. It's on YouTube. Artificial. It's a very good one. Gets into the hatcheries and the fisheries and what that does to the fish. The other one is Damnation, which is about the dams coming down. Very good. Both of them very good. Just telling the stories about the salmon from the salmon's perspective.
Mhm.
Before we get into it too, I got an announcement to make. I mean, this is another one of those. This is kind of the animal that launched this series is the bison, and I have an opportunity up here. I'm on the Fort Peck Reservation to work with the American buffalo, the bison, out here at the Fort Peck tribe. They have a herd.
That's really cool, man.
Doing some consulting work. We'll see how it goes, but I'm going out there on Thursday here in a couple days to Yeah, no,
Yeah. No,
fitting.
that's pick up a few of those Sioux words there for bison. Yeah,
Conca.
Tatanka, yeah. Yeah.
Got a
And you
Assiniboine
know,
too, though.
right, right.
No,
Um,
it's good stuff. It's
no,
I
that's really cool. I'm sure you're gonna enjoy it when you have the field days, I'm sure, you know.
Oh, exactly, and that's what it is, and it's getting out. It's getting to these animals, these nature, these creatures that our communities live in harmony with or lived in harmony with. You know, you look at today when we dive into the Alaska natives and the salmon. You know, that's something they are living with. They depend on it. It is their food. You know, it's no different than steak and potatoes, or for
Right.
most of you, McDonald's and fries.
Well, I
Like,
understand that I know that you're a true Montana boy and like your steak and bison and whatnot, but you were almost turned on to salmon going up to Alaska and trying
oh,
some.
100%. No, I had one of the best wild salmon, and it came from a tribal member of a tribe up there. And we were at her apartment, and she was like, hey, you want to try this? And she pulled it out of a baggie, out of her freezer,
Mhm.
and you're just like, unwrapped it because it not only was it in the Ziploc baggie, but it was in the paper in the baggie, keep it
Oh,
fresh. And she's like, my family smoked this in our smoker. This is something we've been doing for like thousands of years. This is we're Alaskan. This is just who we are. And
right.
I just remember biting into that fish, and I did not taste any fish taste. And that's kind of my turnoff with eating any fish is the taste of fish.
Well, that just says how those cold water, that deep red color in the fish is just like that's
Oh, I mean, that fish was,
getting that
it was,
that's
I
what's
mean, it was red. Not as red as this Coke can, but it was deep, like you're saying, that nice, dark, it looked right, looked healthy. And she was telling me about the issues they have with the commercial fishing of that. And that's a whole nother subject that we will get, that I don't think we'll get into today. But
right.
the commercial fishing, both for the natives and non-natives up there, and how that affects the natives, the mining and how that affects that. That they always say no to Pebble Creek, right? But before we get into that, we will hear some commercials. Did you know there's a new native apparel company?
No, I did not.
It's called Shop LS 574, named after the 574 federal tribes and the Little Shell descendancy of its founders.
Wow, that's really cool, man.
It is. It is becoming a spot to order native apparel by and for natives, working with native designers and teams to help best represent Indian country.
That's awesome, dude.
For sure. Now make sure to go pick up some Native podcast swag as well as other native gear while shopping at shopls574.com.
Oh yeah, and do not forget to use code ANP10 to save on your next order.
That's ANP10. Hey Matt, did you know there's a tribally owned net company?
No, I did not.
Not only are they tribally owned, but Blue Ribbon Nets also creates totally sustainable products. With Blue Ribbon Nets, not only are you getting quality nets, but even eco friendly ones as well.
That's awesome, dude.
It sure is indeed. Make sure to use code RUGAROO10 on your next Blue Ribbon Net order to save. Again, the code is RUGAROO10, RUGARU10.
I am definitely getting a blue ribbon net now.
Tune in every Tuesday to hear your favorite native podcast.
That's right. A Native Podcast has new episodes every week, ranging from boarding schools to Indian child welfare.
Not only that, but we have Indian country covered from Maine to California and Florida to Alaska, Hopi to Blackfeet and Choctaw to Tlingit, and all those Crees in between.
And all you other natives and non natives out there, we want to remind you to tune in this Tuesday to A Native Podcast.
All right, welcome back. We are now talking about the salmon and the importance of the salmon in the Pacific Northwest and even the Atlantic. Matt, you did talk about the Atlantic salmon and the importance it plays to some of those main tribes. And we do forget, I mean, it's one of those fisheries where the Atlantic salmon have just kind of gone away. You think you'd be able to fish them down into Florida back in the day, a lot more common. And those rivers on the East Coast, we talk about the Chesapeake and the Delaware and those other rivers where these salmon would go up into the Appalachians.
Yeah, yeah, I'll kind of hit on some of that in the end, but the Atlantic, that's most of your farm raised salmon that you find in the store. It's that real light colored, kind of pale, and it's just it doesn't look right. Doesn't look as good, you know.
No, and you see that
Um,
especially in those fish farms that they have where this salmon just swim in those circles out in the ocean.
right.
Um,
Yeah, I understand you had a couple, was it stories or some things you wanted to hit on?
Yeah, there's a couple right here. AmericanIndian.si.edu, Native Knowledge 360. The Pacific Coast region, native people of the Pacific Coast region enjoy an abundance of sea life and help sustain their economies and diets through halibut, shellfish, and the mainstay of many coastal nations. The most important species in their cultures and relationship with other nations continue to be the salmon. Native nations of the Pacific Northwest define themselves as salmon people. They consider the salmon to be an extremely important gift from the food, the creator, and each year they honor the salmon sacrifice in special ceremonies. There are many geographic regions that distinguish native nations or language groups from one another. In the Pacific Northwest, three major geographic regions are presented here: the Pacific Coast, the Puget Sound, and the Columbia River/Plateau. Despite physical distance and cultural diversity, salmon is a unifying factor for the native people and native nations across the Pacific Northwest. I would like to throw in, when you categorize them that way, you also have uh, the Canadian natives, which is completely different. And I don't necessarily have that much of an education on them, and their policies. I would categorize them as a group. I would categorize the Alaskans. I'm sure within them there are some subgroups. You have some interior tribes that
Yeah,
rely on the salmon as well as like the different regions, the Arctic, um, the coastal, the Bering Strait, the down by Juneau and stuff is going to be different. I know they all have salmon, but the way they go about it, their seasons are going to vary.
yeah, the weathers, the patterns. No, the Pacific Northwest is kind of the most number of fish and the most like prominent when you think of salmon and tribes is like Oregon, Washington, Idaho mostly, right?
Oh, 100%. I
Um,
mean, arguably, when you look at the lower 48, right, your salmon culture really is your Washington tribes. Oregon has tried. You see, I mean,
yeah,
they have the ceremonies, don't get me wrong, and they have the seasons for it. But when you look at like how the fisheries have been damaged due to manifest destiny,
right.
where like Yurok, for example, is really, in my opinion, they're one of the old Yurok and Klamath because they're remote,
Yeah,
have good salmon fisheries in California, Northern California, Southern Oregon.
right,
The Sacramento Bay is about as far south as we considered the area of
right.
salmon. Arguably, they went further down south, but
Y-
climate change
Yeah,
stuff has changed. I have one more introduction here. This one is from the University of Washington and their libraries, essay by Jay Miller. Introduction. Salmon were at the center of life of native peoples living along the Asian and American shores of the North Pacific. Like a miracle, these five different kinds of fish return to the same streams where they first spawned. They begin and end their lives in fresh water, but they spend most of their lives in the salty sea. Not every species returns every year. Since each kind has its own cycles, every salmon has many different names depending on local usage and stages in its life cycle. The most common names, however, are Chinook, also Spring King, Coho, also Silver, Pink, also Humpy or Humpback, Dog, also Chum, Sockeye, which spawns in lakes, while Atlantic salmon returns to spawn repeatedly, Pacific salmon spawn and die, nourishing the meager local soils along with bears, birds, and people living along the rivers. Humans developed a complex set of gear and nets to take full advantage of these runs. Traps, fences, baskets, spears, and lures were all used to take fish. Over the winter, however, high water and bad weather usually wiped out all the traps and catchments, so they had to be rebuilt every spring. The first fish caught was celebrated with a great ceremony and welcome of thanks. Helped by children, sliced, hung, um, or men and women shared the work preparing salmon for winter food. Men took the fish from the water, and women helped by children sliced, hung, dried, and smoked the fish. Sometimes pounded in flour, sometimes left as flanks. These dried fish kept everyone fed. When the treaties were signed in the 1850s between the U.S. government and the tribes of the Northwest and Plateau, the right to continue taking salmon was written in. The US wanted to save money by having native people feed themselves, while the native people did not want to turn into crop farmers or stoop laborers. For over 100 years, however, American settlement and sprawling construction have destroyed or polluted salmon habitats, killing these fish and extinguishing whole runs. The development of canned salmon made fishing profitable for the world market, but massive overfishing with devices such as fish wheels led to dwindling supplies that soon brought natives and other commercial fishers into court. Judges upheld the treaty right, allowing natives back into the fishery, but ignorance and bitterness still lurk. For natives, salmon and the gift that comes with them every year to keep them alive. Similarly, everyone along the coast once ate great whales that were hunted by special men, uh, as among macaws or dried that drifted onto beaches that were truly gifts from the sea. That died and drifted onto beaches. They were truly gifts from the sea. What stands out clearly from native sources is how much people identified with these underwater beings. Epics told what it was like to be a salmon, where they came from, what they did, or how they live among themselves. Look at Looking at home very much like humans. To provide a few of these viewpoints, we will meet with a modern elder, recount two legends, for one from the interior drained by the Columbia River and one from the coast of Washington. And they interviewed the salmon priest of the Skagit River. They talk about the fish spear, and they tell you the coyote spreads salmon along the Columbia River story. And that's in the University of Washington libraries. But I just like that opening to kind of who they are as people when you look at the Northwest tribes. It's kind of interesting because you grew up in the Northwest as a Plains native person. That's your background, that's your blood.
Yeah.
But you
Yeah.
were very much around it, involved in it. At OSU, you helped with some of these salmon ceremonies.
Mhm. Yeah, it was very interesting, and it's kind of like how native people adapt, right? And people who maybe they marry a native person from another tribe and they go live with the woman's people and the culture is a little different. Like it's familiar in some
Go
ways,
work
but
with their buffalo.
yeah, yeah. But like I remember when my dad, when I was little, caught a steelhead, a winter steelhead, and I remember it was always foggy and rainy, because that's what it is here. It's just kind of like, yeah, you end up doing the things the locals do, like, because that's what you do.
Right. No, it makes
Um,
sense. That makes sense.
yeah, yeah, if you want me to just go ahead and talk about it a little bit.
Go ahead. We can talk about this map of the salmon people here. Yes.
Yeah, so this one it's kind of the tribes that have traditionally utilized salmon, and it goes, I want to mention it goes down further in California than I thought, but if you think about it, any of those streams that go into the Pacific there, even down to Santa Barbara and Chumash down to there at the very bottom is considered in that. But realize that these tribes along the Southern California coast, they traded with the ones up north here.
Yeah.
They
And Hawaii.
yeah, and Hawaiians and a lot of those Southern Cal like acorns, all the acorns from those oak trees in California was like a huge staple they trade. And but then, you go up here in British Columbia and Washington's kind of, you might agree with this, but Puget Sound's kind of the like center of the salmon culture in this region, in my opinion.
I do agree with you because when you talk about like the tribes, then you get up into Alaska, and Alaska almost becomes its own thing. And I think part of why Alaska becomes its own thing is the Russian rule at one point and how that was. The Alaskan tribes like to separate themselves, rightfully so. But you're right, the Puget Sound is kind of that heart of that. And I think when you look at North America, like we said, the three different categories, right? You have like the coastal, which that's what this California, Oregon, Washington stuff is, right? Your coastal tribes with the salmon. You have your inland Puget Sound tribes, and then you have that Columbia River, like you have, like you said, the Spokane, Kalispell, Kootenai, Coeur d'Alene, Nez Perce, Shoshone getting in on the action, right?
Yeah.
Um, and that's
Yeah.
the thing, like people really like to dumb us down and say we didn't connect, we didn't trade, we didn't innovate or any of that stuff, and we did. We were experts at a lot of that stuff in this area.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
no, I was just saying the culture blending within the tribes at that at in these historic times, you know?
Right, right. Like you're saying, these Columbia River Basin or Plateau, or many names they call them. But the Shoshone people be like, weren't they buffalo hunters? Yes, but that's the Upper Snake River in Idaho. That's Fort Hall, basically Fort Hall, Idaho, right there. They fished and hunted buffalo.
Well, and you and I were talking about it's like how is Salmon Lake called Salmon Lake all the way in Montana? And it's like, well,
Mhm.
you follow the Columbia River, it goes up here to the Clark, and the Clark's Fort pulls into the Kootenai River. The Kootenai River then goes into like
Right.
they all are connected, and those salmon would make that journey. Um, they still make that journey, some of them arguably, but it's just we've overfished it. These fisheries are overfished.
Right.
You also, when you talk salmon country, another one of these places you talk about is Alaska. You hear us talk about Alaska, and I'm going to share the map of Alaska that you provided us here, Matt. And here it is.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. And this one doesn't. It's more kind of by watershed. Is more the thoughts here is like because you can see like up here by the Arctic, there's the Brooks Range, and so anything off that range flows north out to the sea.
Right. And they
Uh,
have the Arctic char and then the salmon up there. Um, and there are different salmon, the different seasons. The Alaska seasons are a little bit different than, like you said, the Washington, Oregon, California seasons.
right.
Some of these tribes are actually going out onto the ocean and fishing the salmon as the salt water before they come up the rivers. Some of them come up the rivers.
Mhm.
You see the fish wheels, you see the sustenance fishing. Um, and we'll talk
Right.
a little bit about sustenance fishing at the end of today's podcast, but that's a whole category within itself. That's a whole episode within itself.
And
Just
and two out of this, you could argue, in my mind, there's kind of four regions in Alaska. You got the Aleutian Islands, so just the islands out here. Kodiak Island, sometimes its own thing because those are the bears right there. Southeast Alaska is very much like British Columbia and Washington with the totem poles and the Clinkets,
Yep.
those kind of rainy, really rainy a lot. You could argue the interior, Yukon, Cook Inlet, Copper River is all interior, and then
Mhm.
all the coastal areas.
Yeah, and then
Uh,
the Arctic way up top, but
yeah, the
yeah, for
Yukon,
sure.
the Yukon is such a big because that river, that's a giant. You think the Columbia is big. This river makes it look like a midget.
No, and that's what it is. It's a huge, huge watershed. The salmon that go up that river and into those tributaries for sure. And that's Alaska there. Um, Good to share those, good to have those maps for everyone to check out and see on these, when we talk about salmon culture. Um, I wanted to get in one more definition here that the Columbia River Intertribal Fish Commission has, and the Columbia River Tribal Interfish Commission manages the fishing of the tribes on the Columbia River because you have both Washington and Oregon tribes, and some Idaho tribes too, I believe, come into play. And it's just the way they fish those rivers. The seasons they have are different than the public seasons or the commercial seasons. It's just a lot different. But they have a really nice blurb here, and I want to share that. Um, Salmon have long been the symbol and lifeblood of the people who call the Pacific Northwest home. Columbia Basin salmon play an important role in the ecosystem of the region, returning ocean nutrients to rivers and streams where they were born, feeding wildlife, and even the forest with their bodies. For thousands of years, salmon have also shaped the lives of the people who have lived here since the time immemorial. The cultures, intertribal interactions, fishing technologies, and various religions of the Pacific Northwest tribes were all impacted and influenced by salmon. These fish have been an important part of the economies of the region for thousands of years, from the ancient Indian trade routes to modern commercial fishing. Salmon play an integral part of tribal religion, culture, and physical sustenance. Below is a short list of the many ways in which salmon are sacred to the Columbia River Basin tribes of the Pacific Northwest. Salmon are a part of our spiritual and cultural identity. Over a dozen longhouses and churches on the reservations and seated areas still use salmon for their religious services. The annual salmon return and its celebration by the tribes assure the renewal and continuation of all human and other life. Historically, we were wealthy peoples because we flourished in a trade economy based on salmon. For many tribal members, fishing is still a preferred livelihood. Salmon and the rivers they use are part of our sense of place. The Creator put us here where the salmon return. We are obliged to remain to protect this place. Salmon are an indicator species. As water becomes degraded and fish population decline, so too will the deer, elk, roots, berries, medicines that sustain us. As a primary food source for thousands of years, salmon continue to be an essential aspect of our nutritional health. Because our tribal populations are growing, returning to our pre-1855 levels, the needs for salmon are more important than ever. The annual salmon harvest allows the transfer of traditional values from generation to generation. Without salmon returning to our rivers and streams, we would cease to be Indian people. Um, there's some
Yeah.
good quotes here um, by some of their leaders too, actually. These are really nice. The importance of the first salmon ceremony has to do with the celebration of life, of the salmon as a sustenance, meaning that the Indians depend on the salmon for their living. And the annual celebration is just that. It is an appreciation that the salmon are coming back. It is again the natural law, the cycle of life. It is the way things are. And if there was no water, there would be no salmon. There would be no cycle, no food, and the Indian people respected accordingly. Antone Minthorn Umatilla. My strength is from the fish. My blood is from the fish, from the roots and the berries. The fish and game are the essence of my life. I was not brought from a foreign country and did not come here. I was put here by the Creator. Chief Menonoic, Yakima, 1915. So
Wow.
I'm gonna show a video here of kind of the interior Columbia Plateau people. I feel like now is a good time to show that video because that just kind of shows you the expanses of the salmon. You know, we're talking California to Alaska, Oregon, Washington. When you're in the lower 48 US, you think of Washington and Oregon when it comes to the salmon
Right.
specifically. But they did come as far in as Montana, Idaho, you know, on these interior rivers here. So we'll share that video now.
Way ah, eh, ah, eh, ah, eh, ah, eh, ah, hey. Way ah, eh, ah, hey, la, eh, ah, hey, ah.
And that was a video. It was really good. I like adding these into these stories with you guys to share. Uh,
Well, and the connection on that video with like how carving the canoes are related to fishing the salmon and you're getting the wood and there's just this whole connection with everything.
oh, and that's who we are. We're connection to the land, connection to the beings, and like the quote, like the Columbia River and the Tribal Fish Commission said, in their statement is like, "There's no fish, there's no us."
Right.
You know, and that's a huge statement. Um, Fun facts. I don't know. You said you had some fun facts real quick.
I do have a couple I'll read off here. I thought were fitting. We did mention the Yukon River, so I have a really good quote here, or a fact. Salmon can migrate more than this is a Canadian webpage, 3,000 kilometers
Yep.
upstream through fresh water to spawn on the Yukon River. But it says that is comparable to driving halfway across Canada. Pretty far.
That is far. That is really
Another
far.
another one I thought was it's talking about the city of Vancouver, BC, but it's fitting. The city of Vancouver has lost most of its salmon streams due to urban sprawl. Out of the
Wow.
50 streams, only two remain.
Wow.
So the influence of like humans, and you think of cities like Seattle or Portland, for example, and what the pollution and things have done in that area, right? Uh,
Yeah, that's
Urban
huge.
sprawl.
Um, is that all you got real quick?
Yeah, yeah. I
Okay.
mean, there's a whole bunch here, but I just thought some fitting.
I'm gonna share this share my screen right here for you again
Okay.
because I believe this is one of those documents
Oh,
that is important right here. It's the life cycle of the salmon, 2 to 7 years old. I'm gonna let the printer print real quick. I don't know why it started printing.
no, this is good to show because this is more the like biology aspect of what salmon do. Um,
Hold on. It's switching the lights out and stuff. All right. Well, all right. I want to share this picture here of the life cycle of the Pacific salmon. It's a 2 to 7 year cycle right here. We'll start here with them laying the eggs. The female digs a nest in the gravel called a red with her tail. She then releases thousands of eggs into the nest, and the male fertilizes them. Most salmon die after spawning. The eggs begin to hatch 6 to 12 weeks. The newly hatched salmon still have a food sac attached to them. When the food sac is used up, the fry emerge from the gravel and must find food. Some species stay in the stream for up to 2 years. As they mature, they become camouflaged. When they are ready to transition to saltwater, they are called smolts. The smolts swim downstream to the estuary, where the river meets the sea, and their bodies change so that they can live in salt water. This is called smoltification. The salmon live in the sea until maturity, 1 to 7 years, depending on the species, and migrate thousands of miles, as you were saying. When they mature and are ready to breed, they enter the fresh water and travel the stream or pond to spawn. They will return to the place where they hatched and continue the cycle. No one knows how salmon will return home or perhaps remember the distinctive scent or smells along the way on their journey home. They do not eat at all. So, kind of a quick little lifestyle thing I thought
but
I'd share.
what I think's amazing about that process is how they return to the stream they came from, and like they know where to go to like get there, you know.
Oh yes. No, and part of that's called the salmon homecoming, and this document also has something on that. And what is that salmon homecoming? Native Americans have always been connected to the land and ocean. In the old days, everything they ate grew in nature. Everything they wore was made from things they found in nature. They did not use watches or calendars to tell time. Instead, they watched the plants, animals, and passing seasons, as well as the stars. I do want to mention that. We were very good astronomers.
Mhm.
Native Americans had a great respect for nature and gave thanks to nature when food was plentiful. The most important food in the area was salmon. The Native Americans have always had an important tradition to show respect for this first salmon to arrive in the river each year. The fish is cooked in a special way, and everyone shares a bit. Before it is eaten, though, the head and bones and tail are returned to the river. All of the people sing songs and tell how grateful they are for the return of the salmon, and pledge that they will always show them the proper respect. The remains of the fish are brought to the river in a special ceremony so that the spirit can go back to the salmon people and tell them that it is all right for the rest of the salmon to swim upstream because the people on the shores will still remember the right way to treat them. Today, we are celebrating the tradition through Salmon Homecoming, an annual event on the Seattle waterfront to acknowledge the return of salmon to the ocean to spawn, the continuing of Native American traditions, stewardship of salmon, and the health of our watersheds. And that's just an example, the Seattle one here, um, of the salmon homecoming. But you do have homecoming celebrations, such as the one in Yurok, which I suggest, Matt, buddy, you need to go check out. This year, it's this. Actually, no, it's this weekend. So maybe next year. Uh, it's the 61st annual Salmon Festival.
Oh, cool.
And it's happening this Saturday, August 16th. There's numerous activities for kids, cultural demonstrations, Puyu Run Walk 5K, live music, and more. This event features vendors selling high quality, locally made gifts, items, and specialty foods. Starts at 9 a.m. And it goes till 3. There's vendor applications, parade applications, agenda. What does the agenda have? Let's click on that. There's a 3-on-3 basketball tournament, a parade, the first dam removal film screening. There's a stick game tournament, an arm wrestling tournament. Blue Mountain Tribe performs. Second dam removal film screening. And then the festival wraps up, but they have a nice, it's right next to the tribal office there. And they have a really nice poster there. Healing the River is
Oh, cool. I've heard good things about their festival there. Um, and yeah, that's in August. So that's the return of the fall Chinook.
that might be one next year for the Shop 574, Matthew, that we go to.
Yeah, yeah, that would be. They have a small, more of a traditional gathering, but it's public for the spring Chinook in May. And it's at that longhouse right off the gorge there, east of the Dalles, that little Celilo village or whatever. They have a little thing in May as well, but it's smaller, but in a more traditional kind of house kind of thing. Um, so yeah, one's for spring and this one's for the fall Chinook.
That's really neat.
But yeah,
The
lots.
Yurok, a little bit more about the Yurok. The Yurok Nation is the largest federally recognized tribe in California, as we talked about on our Yurok episode. But the salmon are truly the essence of these Yurok people and
Mm.
our foundational identity, and they would not exist without them. Tribal chairman says our people are known as great fishermen. The Klamath and Trinity rivers are the lifeline of our people because the majority of that is our food supply. Um, for Yurok, this is what they've relied on forever. So when the dams came down, which is a huge, important thing, and them getting that land back to take the dams down too, has also been a huge issue. Their chairman was also quoted saying, "If the salmon don't survive, we don't either." Um, I do have a a little bit to tell you about the dams coming down
Okay. Did you
because
want me to touch on that Atlantic salmon briefly?
yeah, we will get in. I'll talk about the
Okay.
dams
Okay.
because they're kind of related to the Klamath and the Yurok area, and then yeah, then we'll get into your Atlantic salmon.
Okay.
The Klamath River Dam project removal. And this is an article from this year. Um, The largest such effort in U.S. history produced positive results almost immediately. The $500 million project dismantled four hydraulic dams along the 257-mile Klamath River, which originates near Klamath Falls, Oregon, and flows into California's north coast, where it empties into the Pacific Ocean. The dams completed between 1918 and 1962 significantly altered the river's natural flow, for more than a century preventing threatened and endangered salmon and spawning and at steelhead and trout from reaching their spawning grounds. Within 10 days of completing the final in-water work at Iron Gate Dam, an earth-fill structure farthest downstream, more than 6,000 Chinook salmon were observed migrating upstream into the newly accessible habitat over a 2-week period, according to Mark Branson, PhD, CEO of the Klamath River Renewal Corporation, the nonprofit established to oversee the removal. So right there, 6,000 salmon with one of the
Wow.
dams being removed. So just the importance of that and what the salmon does for the ecosystem. I have that infographic. I don't know necessarily if I will share that on today's podcast, but I do suggest you guys look strongly into that because the salmon help with the water helps with the plants help with the animals and the insects and the bugs and the little animals and the other, you know what I mean? Like it's such a bigger ecosystem,
Awesome.
you
Yeah.
know, like it's
Yeah,
what they're one of those species. They're a staple species.
exactly. I mean, you could argue wolves in the Yellowstone, but that's a more of a controversial topic we won't get into today.
No, but you're absolutely right with the wolves in the Yellowstone, and I'm out here. One of the things I learned about with the bison is
Mhm.
supposedly there's a moss. There's some sort of
Oh,
it's a non-native invasive moss out here that ruins the grasslands.
oh wow.
And when that happens, then how do you have healthy bison herds if your grasslands are ruined, right? Same concept. If your forests are ruined, how do you have healthy fish habitat?
No,
Bada bing,
exactly.
bada boom.
Welcome to
But
the-
you have a story on Atlantic salmon. You want to talk a little bit? Yeah, that's kind of good. Let's get into the Atlantic salmon.
Yeah, so a lot of the viewers might be familiar with this fish by seeing it in the grocery store. And most of the farm-raised salmon is the light pink colored farm-raised Atlantic salmon. So the story on Atlantic salmon is I'll kind of summarize it here is it was essentially overfished
Hmm.
and it being the northeastern United States. Atlantic salmon were an important seasonal food source for the indigenous peoples of the Northeast United States, including the Penobscot, Passamaquoddy, and Maliseet tribes of the state of Maine. Um, and it says here they were utilized by early European settlers as well. See, so the overfishing part. But the numbers, they were considered endangered in the year 2000. And the numbers they just were so low. But there's been recovery efforts, particularly in Maine and the Penobscot River. So it was seen a success when the runs hit 1,400 fish, which to salmon out in the Northwest, you're like, that's
Wow.
nothing. But this was considered a success to see 1,400 go up the Penobscot River. Um, there's a lot of groups right now, environmental groups really pushing, to recover this ecosystem. Um, they have signs in areas in Maine where, like, if you catch an Atlantic salmon, you have to throw it back, kind of thing.
Oh, good.
So and then working with those tribes right now, it's really only in the rivers in Maine where they're caught. South of there, they haven't really recovered yet in New England. But yeah, the Atlantic salmon, like, not thought of as often other than
No,
farm raised fish, right? But they're slowly making a comeback.
that's good to hear because you want those healthy fisheries. And you got to think how many Atlantic salmon probably fed tuna, the blue
Yeah.
tuna out there, which is another fish that's going endangered.
Yeah.
I hear that there's factories in Japan that have frozen freezers. Basically, it's basically warehouses that are freezers,
Oh wow.
frozen blue tuna, because once it goes extinct, they can jack the price up. Like that's kind of the like their thought. Um,
Right.
so that's definitely something we need to think about in our fisheries, like is it worth it commercially? Some of these things weren't made to be produced massively. You know what I mean?
Right.
Like were we supposed to be sending salmon all over the world? I mean, no, because you have that fish all over the world in different
Yeah.
ways.
Right.
Like
Right.
even there's salmon in Japan, right? You probably
Mhm.
have the Atlantic salmon that are on the European side and the
Oh
African
yeah.
side, right? So there are fish that are similar that serve those same kind of like ecosystem roles.
Oh yeah.
Um,
No, you're exactly right. Because the Ainu in North Japan, they're kind of like an indigenous people. They live very similarly to Northwest or Alaska natives, and they fish for salmon on that side of the Pacific, like same latitude.
this Earth was designed to be a support yourself kind of environment, live off the land where you're at. We've
Right.
turned it into an import export kind of environment where oh, I get my fish from Italy. I get my pizza from this. I get my sauce from here, Mexico,
Yeah.
my sugar from there, right? When in reality it should be like, no, we grow it here. I get it at the local farmers market. We trade it because I have chickens. I trade eggs with you for butter because you have cows, whatever that may be. Uh,
Right.
but that's not the society we live in anymore. So we have to also adapt. But how do you keep these staples and these cultures alive? Because part of, I mean, if the bison doesn't exist, a lot of these native cultures on the plains, it's a hard, it's a hard life.
Yeah. One thought there, real quick. I think uh, we we should do an episode on like a Penobscot tribe or some Maine Northeast, some Northeast stuff. Just kind of like thinking about that. Like we need to be more familiar.
No, I agree with you, and I
And
think that could be our next tribal nation that we do is up there is the Penobscot Nation of Maine, because
yeah.
they are kind of one of the larger ones in that area. That's the hard part with the Northeast is they really felt the colonialism impacts. Those tribes got hit hard with disease, with land taken, conquered, all that. So. It's good to see that they are doing stuff. In Alaska, however, part of the salmon culture is the subsistence programs. I'm going to kind of give you a overview of what that is because the fisheries fall into that category. Subsistence refers to the harvest, use, and sharing of wild, renewable plant and animal resources for food, shelter, fuel, clothing, tools, or transportation as part of a long-standing practice, and that is important to the native Alaskan culture. In Alaska, subsistence hunting, fishing, and gathering is protected and regulated under federal law. Title 8 of the Alaska National Interest Land Conservation Act, which accords a priority for harvesting fish and wildlife by rural residents over recreational sport and commercial users on the federal land. The state of Alaska also manages subsistence fishing and hunting for state and privately owned lands. Albeit all Alaska's residents are eligible under these regulations. Our way of life is how Alaska natives describe their traditions of subsistence fishing and hunting and gathering. Protecting these activities helps preserve the indigenous cultures, share tradition, ecological knowledge, and connect tribal elders and youth. Wild subsistence foods are healthier and more economical for Alaska Native people than processed store-bought foods, which may be shipped into rural communities at a great expense. Protecting subsistence activities also supports the economies of Alaska Native communities. Subsistence hunting and fishing and gathering constitute a local economy operating alongside the cash economy. A healthy balance between these two economies include a sustainable subsistence economy, and it is critical to the ongoing resilience of the Alaska Native communities. The BIA plays a key role in federal and state agencies' management of subsistence and advocates for the Alaska Native subsistence rights through the Federal Subsistence Board. The subsistence branch also provides funding, guidance, and technical assistance to tribes, Alaska Native villages, and Alaska-based interior tribal organizations on managing natural resources for subsistence use. The BIA Division of Natural Resources, Branch of Fisheries, Wildlife, Recreation, provides competitive funding for eligible Alaska-based intertribal organizations to protect, conserve, use, enhance, or restore natural resources for the subsistence use with a goal of obtaining a tribal reserved right to subsistence resources, allowing true co-management with state and federal partners. Um, there's ways to apply. Um, a lot of natives do that. Another kind of cool thing is like a funded program they may have is pike eradication. 3 Mile Creek was having an issue with pike and they're eating the salmon, and they removed 1,300 of those. They have some
Wow.
pictures of that. So definitely some good things coming out of those programs.
No, that's awesome. They have that to eliminate, the invasive fish and,
Yeah,
areas they're not native to.
yeah, no, definitely exciting stuff. Kind of that's all I got. Anything else on your end?
All I was gonna say at the end to our viewers was there's a lot of really great markets if you want to buy some native smoked fish. Um, I will shout this one out because I stop there every time I go this way in the Columbia Gorge. But Brigham Fish Market in Cascade Locks, Oregon has fresh caught native fishery, native owned, smoked salmon. They have sturgeon, steelhead. They have all kinds of stuff. They have a small restaurant there even now. Um, yeah, check it out if you're in the gorge.
Yeah.
Support a native business, native
Oh,
fishery.
definitely. And I know you stopped at that one down there in Yurok when we were down there, and
Yep,
they're there. I mean, we saw them up in Washington too. I got my Olympic National Park hat on today.
there you go.
But I think I totally agree with what you're saying. Go check them out. Any final words?
No, I think that was it. Like, I mean, get out there. There's plenty of opportunities to try salmon fishing if you live in any of those areas we talked about. You know, look into the regulations, have your licenses, know what you're doing.
No, yeah, have your licenses too. And like even then, like if you do go to some of these tribal lands, use your um like spend the money on the
Mm,
tribal tourism. Like they're not getting a lot of money. I'm talking about like I've talked to these ladies about this bison range out here, all they got is a parking lot. They want a visitor center, right? So the funding is needed. They need guests. They need people to stay there. Navajo tribal tourism's got some good stuff going on. These salmon communities have some stuff, some tours, ocean tours. Sometimes you can go out on their boats and see some stuff. So definitely go support a native business today. But until next time, bye
I know ballers, I
bye.
know chiefs, I know riders from the east. I know educated natives down to picket in the streets. Middle fingers to police. Fuck you, we come in peace. I know red skin hippies that be giving me the creeps. I know beauty, I know beach, I know savages and freaks. And I know a couple cousins even bougier than me. No, ain't elite, bougie native, yes indeed. Art exhibit to the club, and we roll it 20 deep. Copper on my neck, gold on my ring. Feather on my hat, skin stitched chin. 100 warriors on my back, they be drumming when I sing. Man, there ain't no way around it.
A Native Podcast is produced by G&G Advertising and Quartz Lake Productions.